very proud if we manage to get a significant amount of women in as CEOs by 2025. Obviously, that's our headline number, but we're much more about the process. So if we have a really decent universe of members signed up, that is the critical element, because that's when women genuinely feel that they're being supported.
Yeah, and I think that is the most important thing. Like you say, it is the process, and the process is the most important thing, because, well, without it, you won't be able to make the changes or move in the right direction, really. So I'm curious to know more about your background. Like, what's your career story?
So as I always say, I feel like I'm a bit of a fraud, because this is all about talent management. I am working with some exceptional people, team members, fellow directors, ambassadors, people who work within the member companies who are so experienced in this area. And some of them have had 20, 30, some more years experience focusing entirely on this area. So obviously I don't have a people's background. I don't have a talent background. My background is investment banking, a mixture of capital markets and M&A. And then I joined lastminute.com very early to do their scale up, where I was doing M&A, mergers and acquisitions, buying companies. And then I went back into investment banking, and then I went back into tech. So I've hovered between the world of investment banking and the world of tech e-commerce. So it's rather surprising that I've got involved. But I think that sometimes, I always call myself a coordinator, an enabler. Having that outside perspective means that you don't start off with any view of your own. You don't have a view. You're literally just collecting and collating people's opinion. Obviously, I come from a scientific background. I'm a chemistry graduate. I did a lot of maths. Everything goes into Excel. And I think that that's, if you start looking at the responses that people give in a more systematic and data-driven level, and then back that up by some statistical analysis, then you frame your questions not thinking that you know the answer because it's not your area of expertise, but it's a genuinely open inquiry, which means that you get a genuinely open response from the people that you speak to.
So tell me a little bit in the sense of who has maybe inspired you, so some males, females, anyone that's inspired you to kind of move forward in this direction?
So I think, there's some names that sort of come up right at the beginning. So some of our very early ambassadors are also people who have been mentors of mine for quite some time. So Dame Alison Carmworth, who was one of the first female, if not the first female woman chair of a FTSE 100 company. She was the chairman of Land Securities, and she's also an investment banker like I was. We worked at Schroders, not actually together. She was senior to me, but she was someone who had been in this world for a long time and had always been a great promoter of women. And we got to know each other through our work network, which was the Schroders and Investment Banking Network. And I noticed that when I made my last career change, I normally speak to my mentors, some very senior men generally, because I've worked in a world which is very dominated by men. So the senior voices that I respected tended to be male. And obviously, as you get older, your outlook on the world changes. And I just found that while they were giving me good advice, I'm sure it wasn't advice that particularly related to me. I couldn't really relate to it. It didn't really help me. So I spoke to Alison, and the advice that she gave me was spot on. And I could relate to it immediately. And I think at that point, I thought, actually it's very important to have a female network. I have various networks, my tech network, my last minute network. They're brilliant, very diverse in terms of the types of people involved. But I think that inspired me to put together the Women's Networking Group, which is the grassroots behind 25 by 25. And, one of the early people who sort of helped co-found that group was Janet Pope at Lloyd's Banking Group, who again just said it's very important for women to speak to women because we face different issues. And that group has now got 250 people in it. So we've grown quite rapidly.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And I'm all for any network that brings women together, because we're all the biggest cheerleaders for each other. And I think that makes like such a difference to kind of have a different perspective, but just people who understand your situation as well.
Completely. And the fact is, it's important to have a balance. 25 by 25 is not just for women, it's about balance. But the fact is, we do live in quite male-dominated structures in our work environments. Yeah. So it's very important to find that counterbalance, which may have a slightly different point of view.
Yeah. So 25 by 25 is a really incredible campaign. How do you keep yourself motivated to do more and to keep going?
So that's a very good question. So now we've got to a stage where we have to create a solid infrastructure. When we set this up, we were very clear that this wasn't going to be a fluffy organization that, comes together and has a little bit of an impact and then disappears. Especially when it comes to data, data needs to be measured over a long time. You need to have systematic tracking mechanisms. Otherwise, data becomes noise, it becomes irrelevant. So from the very start, and Alison was a great supporter, when we started speaking to the first chairs, we said, look, if we're going to set this up, if this is going to be a corporate-led initiative, then it has to be done professionally. So proper funding has to go in place. Obviously, some people want to contribute pro bono, but there is a cash value to that pro bono. And we will set up as a solid organization, which is properly staffed, where people are properly remunerated, where we can properly support the members. So there'll be a proper members team that can support the members and help them through their issues, and also develop some decent data tools that are done with all the rigor of any major index organization, because it's very important that the data is very reliable and properly verified. So that was always the idea. And I think that now we're in a position, we've got members in, we've got the funding in, we will now set up this properly staffed professional organization.
Amazing. That sounds great. And what one piece of advice would you give to a female who's striving towards the top to one day become a CEO?
So I think the most important thing is to say so. So I think that some women think, oh, I'd quite like to do this, but then they don't feel emboldened to say so. And then, or they leave it too late and a sort of opportunity arises and people say, well, why didn't you say anything earlier? So I think if this is an ambition, say it as soon as you can, because you can't parachute into a CEO position. You need to be prepared for it, whether you're a man or a woman. There's no difference. So the sooner you say, this is a path that interests me, then that's a clear signal to any organization that this person would like to be put on this pathway. And this is very much what we're encouraging companies to do. And then once you've expressed that desire, then find a company that's going to give you the opportunities. Because you may try it and think, this is exactly where I want to be. And you may try something and say, well, actually, it's not for me.
Absolutely. And where can people go to learn more about 25 by 25?
So At the moment, we're set up as a support structure for the members, which is the corporate members. So obviously we have a website which informs about general news. We're posting every month, as you've seen, interviews with our ambassadors who are CEOs generally or very senior women. And that, because that comes out every month, they're like a case study. So I think that those are very interesting to read. Obviously, we have a LinkedIn page, and that gives you a bit more current news about recent activities. We do want people to support. At the moment, they can support by following us on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to do it. And we will expand sort of our offering in terms of information as we build. But at this stage, our priority, it is for everyone, because I think anyone who would like to be a CEO one day is going to be interested in this process. But our first priority is to make sure that the companies are really providing that opportunity, so that any woman or any person who feels that they're not part of that elite set is emboldened enough to say, I'd like to follow this pathway. What should I do?
I love that. Well, Tara, it's been amazing to hear your story, to learn about 25 or 25. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. Thanks again, Tara, for joining us. That is all we have for this week's episode. But be sure to hit subscribe so that you're notified of every new episode. And of course, be sure to follow on social at Female CEO Club. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Plus, each month, I'll be running a giveaway. All you need to do to enter is take a screenshot of you listening to the show and tag us in that photo on social. And we'll announce one lucky winner to receive a gorgeous notepad and pen, which is perfect for noting down some of the incredible insight our guests share. Thanks for listening.